Today's video is going to be a tour that I was going to do the other day, but my cameraman, Lemmy's videoing was bad. If you haven't noticed yet, there's no actual cameraman. But either way, I still blame all my camera issues on Lemmy, and it's easier to talk to somebody instead of me holding my little stick. A little chuckle, a little lowbrow there again. But so I'll take on the little garden tour, and then also go over some gopher stuff. Those bastards. Starting the tour, I'm starting from a different direction than I did before, and it's for good reason, and we'll get to the reason at the end. So I think it was last weekend, or the weekend before. It's kind of a blur when I'm out in the garden, but I've got a couple eggplants there, a habanero, and then a couple more eggplants. And then there's tomatoes in all the beds. Most of the tomato beds have between 5 and 6, and off and on there's now 3 in some, 4 in some, because the gophers have decided to eat them. I also interplanted a bunch of lettuce and then also chamomile. And here is the tomatoes interplanted with the Swiss chard, and so far I've noticed that interplanting like this at least gives the gophers another option to eat. So there's some benefit there, and there's more Swiss chard than I could possibly use. And the tomatoes that are growing inside of the garlic don't seem to be phased at all. They're growing up just fine. They're actually getting a little support too. So here's my first gopher area. These things are called gopher hawks. They're little spring-loaded traps. So the gopher will go into the tunnel, and there's that little wire sticking out of the end of that black pipe there. And then when they hit that, the snap will, or the trap will snap up, and it's got a yellow indicator to know. So you can tell that the trap's been set without having to pull these things. Usually if the traps haven't gone off over at least one day, then it's unlikely that they're going to catch anything, and the gophers will get pretty wise as to the types of traps you're using. So you've kind of got to switch it up sometimes, which I'll get to more of that at the end. So again, the tomatoes interplanted all over the place. That one's missing. Thank you, gopher. I think so far the gophers have eaten probably at least 8. Again, I've got a lot of tomatoes, so overall I'm not concerned about not having tomatoes, but one of my varieties, I've only got one plant of it left, and I'm hoping that they survive the gopher destruction. Garlic's getting ready to be harvested here probably within the next few weeks. You can start telling because as those leaves start dying back, each one of these leaves that die back here is part of the wrapper of the bulb down below that'll eventually dry out. So once you get about 5 leaves dying off, then you know it's about time to harvest. And I'll cover the actual harvest in another video. Here's a wine cap mushroom. I inoculated all my pathways with wine cap mycelium, so they just spread. They were only in maybe 3 parts of the garden, and now they just kind of pop up everywhere. Again, that's another really good thing to build the soil. And then hardneck garlics, we'll have garlic scapes. I'll do another video on those. We found a really good use for them this year. They're very, very delicious. A very different taste than just straight garlic. So plenty of tomatoes still, but the area that's very frustrating is this bed. So this is the lone survivor of cherry tomatoes right now, specifically the red cherry tomatoes. I've got other ones, the purple bumblebee. I've got more of those, so I'll end up putting more plants in here once I start killing gophers again. But this one, I ended up using a different type of trap. Gotcha. Something like that. So this is the area I've got the issues with the gophers. Right down there is a hole that I dug. So I showed the gopher hawk over in the other bed I had gopher hawks set up in this bed, but they didn't quite work out all that well. So I moved them to the other bed. They still didn't catch anything over there. And then there was no traps in here, so the gophers came and took one of my 2 remaining cherry tomatoes. So I've only got one of those left. But switching up the type of trap you use helps because the gophers are actually assholes, but they're intelligent assholes. They'll eventually learn the type of traps you're using. They can, with these ones, what they'll tend to do is use dirt. Once they figure out what kind of trap is there, they'll just fill that hole up with dirt to where it sets it off, and then it's no longer a danger, and then they'll dig right beside it. The same thing with those gopher hawks. Once they figure out that that thing is dangerous, they'll just push dirt into it and then just dig right by it. You can tell when you put a little prod in the ground, you can feel right where they shifted that tunnel over to. So you've just got to kind of change the tactics. I've got 2 other types of traps that I use. The other ones require a much larger hole to get that trap in, so I don't like to use those very much. But these ones, you just can slide right into the hole once you clear it. And when you set these ones, you want to open up the hole, leave it open. Sometimes people will cover the hole with some sort of a bucket or an old pot or something like that, just so something doesn't get in there. But what you want to do is get that airflow that can go down into the hole, because it's signaling to the gopher that there's a hole open. So they'll come check it out and hopefully wander into your trap. The other thing you want to do is, with this one, I could only dig down so deep before I start destroying all the other plants around it. But I like to find it where it branches, it tees off, or maybe a Y. Either way, I want to be able to capture both sides of wherever that gopher may be coming or going from. So you put 2 traps in facing different directions, and it increases your chances of getting the gopher a lot more than just putting the one in. Right now there's only the one in there, so we'll see. Hopefully I get this guy soon, because it's causing too much damage for my comfort. One of the things I did want to go over though too is, sadly, gophers are beneficial. Like I had mentioned in the beginning of the video, they will help actually build your soil, because they'll create all their tunnels. Water can get into those tunnels, air can get into those tunnels, and it can feed everything. What they also do is, by eating your plant, they will then digest it, expel their waste, both urine and feces, and that also adds to the soil's overall fertility, really. So yeah, sadly they're part of nature, and nature's got a place for everything and a reason for it. But I do want to drive down the population, because I'd rather have tomatoes than gophers. Although gopher soup might be all right. It might be something we try. I won't tell the wife what it is. I'll tell her maybe it's chicken. Yeah. All right, that's it. Bye-bye. So the trap has obviously been set, and I caught the onion that the little bastard gopher pushed into the trap. I think he's just rubbing in my face that he's smarter than me. The battle continues.